From 1939 until 1945, the largest conflict the world had ever experienced raged. The Second World War led to over 60 million deaths and an untold amount of lives being ruined. No conflict before or after has suffered the sheer amount of destruction that would come in just 6 years. This is the top 5 most deadly battles of the Second World War. Number 5. The Battle of France. 470,000 casualties, from 10th of May to 25th of June 1940. Also known as the Fall of France, marking the end of what was called the Phony War, this battle led to the defeat and occupation of France and the Low Countries. After the successful invasion of Poland, the German army turned west. Even though being similarly sized to the Allied armies in France, the Germans were able to quickly overwhelm the Allies and capture Paris, forcing a humiliating armistice on France. Number 4. The Battle of Narva. 550,000 casualties, from the 2nd of February until the 10th of August 1944. The strategically important Estonian county of Narva saw brutal fighting between the German army, bolstered by the Estonian conscripts, and the Russian Red Army. Both sides were desperate to hold this valuable territory. The battle here was one of the most brutal conflicts of the war. After months of terrible combat, hundreds and thousands were dead, particularly on the Russian side, with the casualty rate almost 10 times higher than the Germans. Number 3. The Siege of Moscow. Over 1 million casualties, from October the 2nd, 1941 until the 7th of January, 1942. The successful Russian defense of their capital from the Germans was a key turning point in the war. Hitler believed that if he could capture Moscow, the Russian Red Army's morale would be crushed and all of Russia would be at the mercy of the Germans. Unfortunately for the Germans, a combination of fierce resistance from the Russian army stationed in Moscow and reinforcements from Siberia, combined with a terrible winter where temperatures dropped to minus 22 degrees and colder, which the Germans were ill prepared for. Losses on both sides being massive, it's believed that the Germans had lost 150,000 men in the first 20 days. Number 2. The Siege of Berlin. 1.3 million casualties, from the 16th of April to the 2nd of May 1945. Being the last major offensive of the war in Europe, the Battle of Berlin saw the fall of the German army, the suicide of Hitler, and the beginning of the end of the Second World War. The Soviet Red Army began their attack on Berlin, coming from the east and south, while the Third Russian Army advanced from the north. The relentless Soviet assault broke into the city and marched towards the center, sweeping through the depleted German defenders, bolstered by the inexperienced Hitler Youth members, finally taking the Reichstag on the 30th of April 1945 and signaling the end of the war. Number 1. The Battle of Stalingrad. 1.5 million casualties, from the 23rd of August 1942 until the 2nd of February 1943. The Battle of Stalingrad was Hitler's major push for dominance in the east, marked by horrific bloodshed and brutality on both sides, the Russians alone having lost almost 1 million men, wounded or killed, denying the Germans from taking the city. With their Romanian and Italian allies defeated, the Germans found themselves trapped inside the city and surrounded. The city of Stalingrad by now already being destroyed by the Luftwaffe, the German army now low on supplies and without any chance of escape was entirely wiped out by the Russian army. This marked the end of German success in the east, and signalled the oncoming defeat for the Germans. Thank you for watching. This was Follower Oz.